identity in this world. However, when it comes to women, the principle undergoes massive change and it is often associated with what is given and accepted from the aspects of a social system and culture rather than what is ought to be from a human perspective. Now, before I tell you my present identity, I would like to tell you about the context that has enabled me to be what I am today. I come from a conservative middle class of a country which is dominated by a strict code of life. I am the youngest of all sisters, so actually not only I saw love and care from my parents, but also from my elder sisters. My father, who was the sole bread earner of his family, had obvious concerns of providing for his family and have his daughters happily married in decent families, which was not an easy task. However, from the very beginning, I saw a simultaneous mitigation of his concerns by my mother in her efforts, courage, and a belief in enabling her daughters with the education so that we never remain dependent on anyone else. Despite restrictions and burdens loaded on the women of our society, I was the first one in my house for whom my sisters managed to get education from an English medium school, which in those days was a real luxury for middle class families. They always envisioned Asma as a high achiever who is able to create her own identity. Now, having seen the suffocation and struggle, I reciprocated their efforts by fetching high grades in my studies. However, there came a time in life when my father left for the better world, and I felt that my mother was too concerned to see me settled and married and not pursue any further studies. This was no less than a shock for me because I was someone who always dreamed of being empowered one day to decide about my own fate. I could not accept it, and yes, it was a challenge to convince my own family that I should be allowed to achieve my goals. I decided to join the profession of accountancy, which was a 6-year journey. While my family expressed their unhappiness on the long duration of the profession, I could see a hidden happiness on their faces that I'm trying to pursue something which is a premium qualification and has no female precedence in my immediate family. During this struggle, I realized how important it is for a woman to have economic empowerment. Besides taking tuition classes, my community Women Professional Forum supported me with funds to pursue chartered accountancy qualification through an interest-free loan. Life during the training period for professional qualification was not easy either. Ratio of female trainees was low with time management issues, which actually discounted work exposure and equal opportunities for females. I would not say I never regretted. There were hard and harsh times when I felt like quitting. However, with the support of my sisters and mother and my aspirations to create an identity for myself, somehow I survived and achieved the qualification with 2 gold medals. The first thing that I did when I obtained my first job in the industry was to pay back the interest-free assistance to my community fund with a gratitude. Higher education is a privilege not every woman gets in our country, and I feel I'm blessed to be among those women in our country. Who inspired me and why? My inspiration had been all the females that were around me in my house, my mother and my sister. My mother for perseverance with integrity, and my elder sister who became a role model of becoming self-reliant, economically empowered woman who writes her own destiny, who takes decisions for herself, as well as who also enable others to be empowered. My elder sister is herself an accomplished and a successful entrepreneur. Now comes the work-life responsibilities. After becoming employable in an important function like finance, the next step was to see if work could be balanced with personal life, and I must admit that this was more challenging. I had seen women around taking career breaks for settling down and then raising a family, sometimes be praised as giving up their efforts for the sake of family norms, and then majority of them never opting to return back to work. To be honest, I could not reconcile with this mindset or social conditioning, and I resolved that I would continue my career no matter what. Sailing through the work environment pressures, I got married in 2007 and relocated to Dubai. I could see myself breaking my own promise by taking a career break when I had my first child. Disappointments from oneself over aspirations which were so deep rooted as from childhood did not prove to be lasting, and within a year, I realized it would be injustice with all the efforts of all those who cared for me, supported me, helped me reach somewhere. This time, the challenge was to convince my partner that a mother of a child who is just a year old could work full time, running between office and work to make sure all what is needed is met was absolutely not easy at all. It's been 11 years I am managing a full time job besides having two wonderful kids. Did I ever imagine I would be joining a male dominated profession? Yes. Well, having lived in a family with no male sibling and seeing a society around which is male dominated in every aspect, it was a natural assumption that the journey is not going to be easy. Being in minority itself brings a lot of pressure on females to go for an extra mile to prove that we are capable and eligible for roles which are meant for men at work, at times exceeding the normal working hours. Obviously, I had been unfair to myself and my health not to forsake the requisite. Women need to accept and acknowledge that in being a woman and proving themselves, at times they are not being fair with themselves as a human being. Studies show that women constitute less than 5% of CEOs of listed companies across the globe, despite having a 50% increase in tertiary level education for women, which means despite having more women at the entry level, there is somewhere leakage in the pipeline which holds them from reaching the leadership positions. There are still companies found in this world existing with finance department with no female composition in the team. The most significant barrier that I have seen in my career, when I started my industry career, which was a very long time ago back in 2004, most of the people at the top were male. Acceptability by the team for a woman as a leader, even as a team member, and women settling for little and not recognizing their real worth were the significant barriers I have seen in my career. The reason behind is stereotyping, that is, men having a cliched view of women's role and women as well assuming a defensive track by focusing more on work and less on career planning well in advance. Men, in contrast, tend to have a very specific vision for the progression of their careers. This unclarity with women or indecisiveness is something that can hold us back sometimes. At least the requisite for diversity has changed over the past 2 decades, the corporate environment, both at workforce level as well as the board level. The question comes, what a woman wants from life? Now, giving it a very simple human perspective, I think a woman always looks for humanity, which means equal respect and value as a human being, be it from fellow men or women. She has an innate ability to accept, adapt, and contribute, but deep inside, she detests to be judged on social biases and prejudices. At the end of the day, each one of us are aware of our given, our strengths, our shortcomings. If she has to prove again and again who she is and strive for her rights, naturally this would result in a different, rather defensive attitude. Women has proved that there is nothing which they could not do. It is just a matter of choice and will. Nurturing talents and empowering individuals have always resulted in a win-win situation for society and humanity as a whole, rather than confronting these or putting them in containers. What advice I would give to the next generation of female leaders, and what advice I would like to share with the young women entering a male-dominated profession? I believe women are born leaders, and I really believe in this statement. Their disposition to multitasking, attention to detail, stepping ahead by example in daily life gives them an edge in decision making. Data shows companies with more women in senior management outperformed companies with fewer women in senior management, with a return on equity of 35% higher and total shareholder return of 34% higher. Also, as per a globalization survey, 53% of business leaders agree that diversity on teams and experience improves both reputation and financial performance. Hence, there is a clear-cut advantage seen on the corporate front derived from inclusiveness and diversity. My advice to young women would be to continue exhibiting their keenness for pursuing studies and seek an identity for themselves. Raising a family, taking care of kids also constitute an important part in life. However, this should not overshadow a person's identity and aspirations. Always work life balance is not achievable. However, work life integration could be. Also, from economic perspective, it is highly important that women come forward and contribute their part and enable and empower themselves. It eventually helps not only them, but their families and generations to come. In the end, I would emphasize that it is easy to have a personal narrative. However, it is extremely important to bring a collaborative perspective to create systemic improvement so that more and more women become part of the workplace. They could be retained there and they could be enabled to reach a higher level within the organizational hierarchy. We all need an identity in this world. However, when it comes to women, the principle undergoes massive change and it is often associated with what is given and accepted from the aspects of a social system and culture rather than what is ought to be from a human perspective. Now, before I tell you my present identity, I would like to tell you about the context that has enabled me to be what I am today. I come from a conservative middle class of a country which is dominated by a strict code of life. I am the youngest of all sisters, so actually not only I saw love and care from my parents, but also from my elder sisters. My father, who was the sole bread earner of his family, had obvious concerns